To Django Templating, more than just blocks, a 30-minute talk given by Cheung.
Hello.
Oh, and at the end, if there's question and answer, we ask that you come to this microphone to ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, this is my talk about Django templating Django, everything in between. Like they said, keep all your burning questions till the end unless something's actually burning in the room. So about me, I'm mostly a front-end developer, but I work mostly in Django projects. I work out of Santa Monica. I'm the president of Pilates. We're trying to encourage more women and support existing women that are Python programmers, and we also have an awesome party tonight. I was also a speaker last year at DjangoCon, and I also talked about front-end Django stuff. So what I am going to talk about, I am going to talk about all about templates. I'm not necessarily going to go in depth in any particular topic, but kind of a breadth of lots of templating stuff. So I'm first going to start with the basics, kind of to get started. Then I'm going to talk about best practices and commonly used tags, extending templates, so making your own custom tags and filters, loading your templates. This includes custom templates, custom template loaders, removing the existing Django templating system with another one, and optimization of templates, and also what's coming up in Django 1.4. So let's start with the basics. This is what the user sees. This is like the closest to the compiled HTML files. So they're not necessarily going to see your APIs. They are going to notice your HTML. The Django templating engine itself, it's a subset of the Python language. There's about more than 30 built-in tags and more than 50 filters. And while it may seem limited, you can also make your own custom tags and filters if needed. And by design, it's separated. So if a designer or front-end developer can work on all the front-end stuff, and the back-end can focus on all the back-end stuff. So before you even get started with templates, there are some things you might want to do. A theme for your IDE. So some people might use TextMate or Sublime Text 2 or Eclipse or something. Syntax hiding, auto-completion, so you can write for tab and it'll actually write out your whole structure so you don't have to waste time writing extra code. Django Debug Toolbar, which is an excellent tool to use. It can show you your template paths, so if you're rendering a lot of different things, you can use the Debug Toolbar to see how many templates you've called and check out variables. And you can also print out all the built-in tags and filters. In your swag bags, you probably got one of these Django 1.4 cheat sheets, which has a list of template tags. It's just a handy reference. Even though you might have dual, triple monitors, sometimes it's nice to have a little reference guide. So starting out templates, how I start out, I keep them in one place. So this is a demo project with a bunch of applications, and I have a templates folder that I store all of my templates in. This makes it easy, so you know where all your templates are. Sometimes people may have a template folder in each application folder, but sometimes you may have like 20, 50 apps, and now you have 20, 50 template folders to keep track of. Now, in writing templates, think PEP 8, the style guide, Python, consistent spacing, tabs versus spaces, doesn't matter, just pick one and roll with it. Like when writing regular Python code, you put all your import statements up top, put all your load template tags up top. Also, with commenting, it might be a good idea to be consistent. If you use the built-in comment tag, it will actually compile the comments out instead of the HTML comments, which are available in view source. So if you have a lot of expletives or something, you can write anything and then it'll be compiled out so the end user won't see it. If you have a bunch of stuff that you want to remove, you can use the comment, block out a section of code. Now, the basics. You start out with a base.html template. This is your main skeleton with a simple block. As you can see, block title is your title, and then you can put your content, and then you can have pages inherit from it. So it can be a home page, it can be an about page. This is the foo page. It extends the base HTML template, so you have all your base styles, and then you can put anything that's unique to foo, about, homepage into content. Now, blocks. I use these practically in every project. Title, meta tags, you might, have them in a database or something. Extra head, which you may have multiple CSS files for depending on what page you're loading. Obviously content, and I typically put all JavaScript includes on the bottom instead of the top, makes pages load faster, so I have an extra JS on the bottom that might be separate from extra head. In writing blocks, you should always end your block structures like so: block title, foo, end block title, instead of just block title, end block. Because in some cases, you might have 6, 7 or more blocks, and then you have a sea of end blocks, and you might want to take out a particular block section, and then it just makes it easier to keep track of. By design, you can't repeat blocks. So you typically have only one title. You don't have like 20 titles for your page. So if you have a section that you want to repeat, think of it doing it in another way: a context processor, an include, or write your own custom tag. And don't overblock, meaning only write a block tag if you really need it. Sometimes people may go crazy saying, oh, here's a header, I'll make block header, I'll make block footer, I'll make block content, block widget, and then soon you'll have, more code to deal with, even if you're not using it dynamically. Including templates. What's nice about Django, it's dry, don't repeat yourself, so if you have a repeating segment, repeating templates, include them. Well, I heard you like includes, so I put includes in your includes in your includes. Some people do this. Don't do that. Try to use fewer includes, only when you really need them, because what happens if you have an include, and then that includes that, I don't know, variables. Obviously, this Django, it's a dynamic web framework to make applications. You're dealing with data coming from the back end. They're objects from a view. So you modify these objects with filters, like so. You take a variable, and then you pass a lower filter, which lowercase is the variable. And you can loop through them using tags. The most basic one, basic control structure, the if tag, if variable, output foo, otherwise output bar. You can also create your own filters and tags, which I will go over soon. Security. By design, Django is a rock-solid framework. From the template side of things, you can be assured that it's really secure. However, if you use a safe filter or autoscape tag, you do run the risk of having malicious code run. So make sure you always sanitize the data. So if you take any user input, you should always sanitize it. Sometimes people have data that you might have scripts or HTML or something you want to run from the backend that's trusted, and you use a safe tag. But sometimes people don't, and then if you have a safe filter running, someone can put malicious JavaScript, and now your website's pwned. When writing URLs, name your URLs tags as much as possible. Define them in your urls.py. So right here we have a foo view to foo URL. Name it foo. So when you write your A tags, you can write URL foo in case it changes. And of course, in your settings, you should have a static URL. Don't hard code your static. Forms. If you're doing a lot of stuff with forms, try using a library, especially if you're dealing with HTML5. Django floppy forms is great. You can also take a look at Django crispy forms, which used to be Django uniform, which takes uniform, which is a nice, it's a way to, uniform is a great way to output forms because semantically, and they look nice. And of course, is a great usage of the include tag because if you have a lot of form-specific logic, you could include in a form. You might have different styles of forms. And if you do use the a form tag, try to use as UL. It's an unordered list. It makes more sense than a paragraph or a table because form input elements or submit buttons or whatever, they're not paragraphs of text. They make more sense as a list, and any front-end developer will get mad at you if you put presentational data in a table. Well, there's really more than one way to do things, even with simple built-in tags and filters. So I'll give you an example. So here we are, if foo bar, show foo bar, else foo baz. It's really simple, but you can also do a different way. You can use the first of tag. So first of tag will output variables in order. So if foo bar exists, we'll output that. If not, it'll output foo baz, and it can go on and on and on. And ultimately, there's no right or wrong way. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with or your team feels comfortable with. Well, now let's talk about extending templates now that we've kind of gone over some basic template tags. Custom tags and filters. If you want to make your own custom tags and filters, say you have a demo app. Well, tags and filters are not HTML, they are Python logic, so you put them in the application folder. And you make a folder called template tags. You can create a file named anything, but name it something that makes sense because you're going to load that. So in this case, demo_utils, you put all your template tags, custom template tags and filters in there. Then once you want to use them, you load that file. Let's start out with making custom filter. We initiate the library, tell it that we are making a custom tag or filter, a declarator, we can name it it will be called removed. And if your filter always expects a string, you can use a string filter declarator. Here's our filter. It's super simple, just a basic example. We have cut, take in a value. We also pass in an argument, remove all instances of argument, really simple. And how to use this, you have a foo object, remove all instances of bar from that object. And if you don't want to take any arguments, just don't pass them in. So in this case, we want to take a variable and lowercase it. So we just make it really simple like that, foo filter lower. Make custom tag is a lot more complex because really you can do anything. With a filter, you are actually just modifying one variable, but with a tag, you can do all sorts of stuff. And really, in the meat of a tag, you have to compile it and render it because you have to take in what the tag describes, and then you have to run the logic, and then you have to present it. And when writing tags, you kind of decide what its purpose is. It's easier if you have a single purpose of what you want this tag to accomplish rather than multiple things. It's better to write many tags that do different things than one tag that does everything. So let's start out simple, because writing tags can be complex. A simple example we'll show current time, we'll pass in Python string date object. So start at the library, make a declarator. We're using a library called simple tag. And it's pretty simple, just have a function, try except, try, let's parse this as, date time object. If not, oh no, there's an error. Well, that's using the simple tags library. If you want to do it without that, import datetime, instantiate it, declarator to what it's called, then this is only the first part of it. It's kind of, you compile it so you kind of tokenize a template tag, what it's taking, error if there are too many or too few passed in variables depending on your need. And you actually have to make, now you have to output it. There's stuff, there's a little boilerplate. So to make easier template tags, there are some libraries, Django Template Tag Sugar, which is written by Alex Gaynor, core contributor to Django. It removes a lot of this boilerplate, makes it a lot easier to make tags. There's also a library that's even more recently updated called Django Classy Tags that class-based template tags. Some of you might be using class-based views, which is an awesome thing to do, and now you can write class-based template tags, which also makes it a lot easier to write tags and more understandable. And less boilerplate, so you don't have all these node functions to go through. Well, in writing template tags, you really have the power to do a lot of things. And really, the whole design of the Django template engine is that you want to present presentational logic. So taking in a variable, for loops, if loops, iterating through them, maybe cycling them, but you don't want to do application logic because that defeats the point of an MVC framework. So don't write a template tag that runs any complicated logic or even Python itself. I've seen it done. It defeats the purpose of a templating language. We're at PyCon, we're not at PHPCon. It's dangerous and it's difficult to support because now if you have a really complicated template tag, unless you know for sure you are the lone programmer on this project, chances are you might work with someone else, especially for an open source project or a job. So someone else might see this like weird monstrous tag and be like, what's going on? Here's an example of an atrocious tag. So, I mean, this is like 15 lines just to show output one class. I mean, this is using, someone wrote a template tag called py to do Python logic, and it looks ugly and gross. Well, loading templates. So we've kind of gone over common tags, how to extend them, making your own tags and filters, but you can also load templates differently. So use cases. In case you want to, maybe you have A/B testing, load testing. You want to load templates, based on your geographical area. You can do that with the template loader settings. And the most important part is a load template source function. And you put your logic there to load templates depending on your need. The Django templating engine is really awesome, but sometimes there are cases where you might want to rip it out and put another one in. There are other Python templating languages like Jinja, Mako, Cheetah. Jinja is the most popular. But why? The Django templating engine is really awesome. There's a lot of cool built-in stuff. Sometimes people are more familiar with another template language. Maybe there is a reported slight performance boost in taking out the Django templating engine with another one. You have different ways to do logic control handling that people might be more comfortable with. But in doing this, you kind of risk, you lose support. So when you use a built-in Django templates, there's a lot of things you can, with URLs, views, but if you rip it out and put in something like Jinja, now you have to do more to support this, and you lose a lot of built-in things that comes in Django. And if you rip this out, you might be tempted to rip other things out, and in that case, you might have to rethink your whole application. Maybe you're better off using something like Flask if you want to use a bunch of other modules together. But let's kind of talk about Jinja, which is kind of popular. Why would you use Jinja with Django? Well, functions are callable from templates, so now you don't have to write your own tags and filters. Loop controls, there's more power in the loop controls in Jinja over Django. Sometimes some people feel that you can't do as much with built-in for loop in the Django templating language. Multiple filter arguments as well, and there is a slight performance increase with it. But there are also cons to this. There's more dependencies and overhead, obviously. There's extra time researching how to do this. You lose a lot of built-in support with the built-in Django template engine. You risk putting too much logic in your templates. You may have more power in putting more presentational logic in, but you risk putting some application logic in. And this speed increase is kind of minimal. And it's kind of, less than 5%. And you have to kind of think if the time you spent on ripping out your templating engine just for such a slight increase is worth it. But there are ways without taking out the engine to speed up your templates, so you can take advantage of all the neat things the Django templating engine has to offer. So you can cache your template loaders. You should be caching everything anyways if you're running a high-performance website. There's a neat library, Django Template Preprocessor, which does a lot of preprocessing, compiles template files, makes things run faster. There's also this cool thing called Django Pancake that Adrian, one of the creators of Django, recently released. he works at every block, and this is something he used at every block, which had some performance gains. It flattens template files. However, you do have to use, you do have to write your template files a little bit differently, a little bit less dynamic, but you do have certain speed increases in certain use cases. And the cool thing is that all the things that Adrian has learned from Django Patent Cake, he's eventually trying to incorporate into Django Core itself. So in the future, we might not even have to worry about all these extra shoehorning things to make Django templates run faster. And also, we're talking about templates, but you can kind of think about other things that can increase your application speed. So you might spend a lot of time optimizing certain things, but maybe that time is better spent caching or more servers or load balancing. And Django 1.4 is to be released at PyCon. And there are cool things regarding templates. So if you started a project or an application, now you can pass in a template. You can pass in a template location, so you can combine it with your favorite boilerplate, less time spent bootstrapping a project. So you can use HTML5 boilerplate, your own favorite base HTML files, makes running projects a lot easier. And there is the else if tag, which a lot of people have complained about, because previously in Django, you only had if and else, and you didn't have else if, and you just chain all these ifs and just C's of end ifs, and now the end is here. So anyways, that's my presentation. If anyone had any questions.
So this is kind of a silly question, but do you ever find yourself manipulating the white space to get your HTML to be formatted nicely?
Yes.
Okay.
It's kind of the OCD front-end developer in myself, because when you have the base HTML and then you have like block content, and then it's kind of in the first line, and even if you tab that particular block, it won't tab everything in there. So you end up having a block, and then you'll have to tab everything all over for it to align. It's just for a view source, but.
Cool, just wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one.
I have a question about that template tag, that horrible one with the sad time slide.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the person who wrote that probably wasn't a front end or primarily front end person?
They weren't. They were a back end person.
Okay. So how did that get resolved? Like, was there pushback and?
Well, it was more like, because I was the front end on that project, and I was like, I need this thing, and he wouldn't necessarily create the thing I wanted, but he wanted to I guess he was feeling clever, and sometimes cleverness bites you in the ass because you end up over engineering things, as in that case.
All right, thanks.
I was just wondering what is sort of the difference between includes and blocks, and when would you use one versus the other?
So blocks are kind of things like a title, or content. And includes, say, a good include would be a sidebar or widget, or one commonly used case is comments. If you have, with comments, the template kind of repeats itself a lot. So you use an include in that. Typically, you don't want to use that many blocks.
Hi. As a new Django user, can you recommend any of the printed books? It's been hard to tell if any of them are worth getting, or if they all come out of date so quickly that it's not worthwhile.
In my experience, they do go out of date really quickly. So I just always, the Django documentation is pretty good.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you talk about what logic you think is appropriate to put inside tags? Because I struggle with making my tags have a lot of logic in them versus tying my view functions to the presentation layer.
Do you mean custom tags or the built-in tags?
Custom tags, yeah.
Well, I think something that feels too small for a view. So sometimes you have a simple function to do something not that much logic into it. Write it into a template tag. It kind of depends, because you don't want a whole bunch of template tags and then a smaller view. I would kind of think of balancing it.
Okay.